There is a quiet power in silence, one that terrifies the noisy world. The ego demands applause. It seeks recognition, constantly reaching outward for validation. But the true path to mastery begins the moment you stop explaining yourself, when you stop leaking your soul in the form of unnecessary words. Let us descend into the depths. There, beneath the performance of personality, lies a truth. Not all things must be shared. Not all energies should be seen, and not all victories need witnesses. Most words spoken in daily life are not reflections of the soul, but defenses built by the ego. We speak not to reveal, but to conceal. We speak to appear certain when we are confused, confident when we are insecure, strong when we are trembling inside. Our words become the armor we wear to hide the fractures within. In truth, we talk to escape ourselves. To speak is often to project, to throw a version of the self into the world that we hope will be accepted. But this version is carefully shaped, edited, and filtered. It is not a mirror. It does not reflect the chaotic, sacred, complex inner world. Instead, it becomes a mask, a persona designed to fit the demands of society, the expectations of family, the projections of friends, and the fear of being seen too clearly. When we speak without awareness, we are rehearsing old patterns. We repeat what we've heard. We echo what we think others want to hear. We become mouthpieces for fear, for approval, seeking for unprocessed pain. We speak because silence terrifies us. In silence, there are no roles to play. There are no lines to recite. There is only the raw encounter with who we truly are beneath the image. The danger of constant speech is that it keeps us from introspection. We remain on the surface, avoiding the deeper psychic material that bubbles beneath the forgotten traumas, the unmet needs, the shadowy desires we're ashamed to admit. Every time we speak without consciousness, we delay our encounter with these hidden truths. But when we dare to fall silent, something else begins to happen. We start to hear the real voice within the voice that doesn't perform. It doesn't sell. It doesn't flatter. It simply reveals, and what it reveals is often uncomfortable. It reveals contradictions. It exposes fear. It shows you who you've been pretending to be and who you've been avoiding becoming. The moment we stop speaking just to be heard is the moment we begin to listen not just to others, but to the murmur of the soul. It is in this listening that transformation begins. It is here that the mask falls and the mirror is cleaned. So understand this. Not all speech is communication. Much of it is camouflage. And the one who can remain silent long enough to recognize the mask and remove it is the one who can finally speak from truth, not fear. Power, in its most refined form, does not need to announce itself. It does not need to raise its voice, declare its presence, or seek confirmation from others. True power lives in the silence, in the withheld word, in the pause before the response, in the tension between what is known and what is never revealed. The more essential something is, the quieter it becomes. Noise is often the cry of insecurity. The louder someone speaks of their importance, the more they are seeking to convince themselves. But the individual who has nothing to prove can afford to remain silent. They do not argue with ignorance, they do not explain themselves to the shallow, and they do not broadcast their every move. They operate from the shadows of discipline, depth, and self-containment. Their silence is not absence, it is presence intensified. There is immense psychological weight in what is unspoken. The unspoken holds mystery, it creates tension, it invites imagination, it allows others to project, to wonder, to assume, and in doing so, it gives you an advantage. When you say too much, you expose your map, you reveal your strategy, you give others access to your sacred terrain. But when you say little or nothing, you retain your leverage. The unknown becomes your ally. People fear what they cannot read. Most people spill their power through overexposure. They speak of their plans before they are ready. They justify their decisions. They narrate their emotions in real time. But in doing so, they dilute the potency of their being. Their life becomes performative rather than purposeful. The more you speak, the more you scatter your essence into the world, hoping someone will reflect it back to you. But those who truly hold power do not seek reflection, they are rooted in self-knowledge. And from that, they move quietly, deliberately, without needing applause. The unspoken word is not weakness. It is waiting, it is the art of restraint. It is the strength to hold your energy until the moment is right. And in that stillness, something sharpens your clarity, your instinct, your timing. Power is not just in action, it is in knowing when not to act, when to watch, when to remain silent, and let the chaos reveal everyone but you. The world expects noise. It is addicted to reaction, to commentary, to constant communication. But you do not need to feed that addiction. You can remain still. You can become the exception, and in doing so, you rise above the noise. You become the one they can't quite figure out, the one they can't anticipate, the one whose silence speaks volumes. Because in the end, it's not always what you say that shapes your destiny, it's what you withhold, what you preserve, and what you let the world wonder about. That's where real power lies, in the unspoken, the unseen, the untouchable. The world is constantly poking, provoking, testing, seeking a reaction, and many fall into the trap. They respond to every insult, every opinion, every shift in tone. But this is not power, this is enslavement. The one who reacts to everything is not in control, they are being controlled. Like a puppet with strings tied to every emotion, they dance to the rhythm of others' intentions. Reaction is the ego's way of defending its fragile architecture. It feels threatened, so it lashes out. It feels unseen, so it speaks louder. It feels hurt, so it retaliates. But in all of this, the self is not centered, it is fragmented, scattered across every interaction, bleeding energy into every situation that triggers it. And when your energy is scattered, you are no longer sovereign. You have become porous, vulnerable to manipulation, easily dominated by those who know how to provoke you. Silence, in contrast, is an act of dominance over the self. It is a refusal to be baited, a refusal to be defined by the chaos of others. It says, "You do not have access to my inner world just because you seek it." And in this refusal, a quiet strength emerges, one that unnerves those who expect a response, those who seek to disrupt your composure, those who feed on your emotional leakage. The reactive person lives in survival mode, constantly defending, proving, explaining. But the self-possessed individual sees beyond the immediate offense. They know that most attacks are projections, most criticisms are confessions in disguise, and most provocations are cries for control. Instead of fighting back, they observe, they conserve, they let the storm pass, and in doing so, they remain untouched by it. To not react is not weakness, it is mastery. It is to say, I choose when and how I engage. You do not summon me, I summon myself. In a world that rewards impulsive responses and emotional outbursts, restraint becomes a revolutionary act. It is a return to inner authority where nothing outside of you dictates your state of being. The more you react, the more you reveal your inner landscape, your insecurities, your wounds, your fears, all exposed through your responses. But the more you withhold your reactions, the more impenetrable you become. You stop being readable, you stop being predictable, and that makes you powerful. True power is not in the ability to crush with words, but in the ability to hold your silence, own your presence, and remain centered in the face of everything that tries to pull you away from yourself. When you stop reacting, you stop leaking, and when you stop leaking, you start winning. Stillness is not the absence of movement, it is the presence of depth. It is the place within where the surface distractions fall away and the hidden voices of the psyche begin to emerge. In a world addicted to noise, motion, and performance, stillness has become almost unbearable, and yet, it is the sacred space where truth finally reveals itself. We are conditioned to think that insight comes from information from external sources, from endless conversations, from constant analysis. But true insight is not given to the one who consumes the most. It is given to the one who listens the deepest. And that kind of listening cannot happen in the storm of distraction. It can only occur when the inner waters become calm. Stillness is not passive, it is intensely active, but on an invisible plane. It is where the unconscious rises, where forgotten memories resurface, where intuition sharpens and where unseen patterns begin to form into symbols. When the outer world is muted, the inner world begins to speak. And what it says is rarely convenient, but always necessary. This is why so many fear stillness, because in it, they are forced to meet themselves. The false roles dissolve, the masks fall, the performance ends. And what remains is the raw material of the soul, the longing, the wounds, the rage, the wisdom. In stillness, you are no longer who you pretend to be. You are simply what you are. And that confrontation, though painful, is the birthplace of transformation. Insight does not shout. It does not fight for your attention. It whispers in the quiet spaces, in the pauses between your thoughts, in the breath between your reactions, in the soft recognition of something you've long tried to forget. If you cannot be still, you cannot truly see, because insight is not just knowing, it is seeing into your motives, seeing into your patterns, seeing into your own shadow. The one who can master stillness becomes dangerous not because they are loud or aggressive, but because they are clear. They are not pulled in every direction. They are not seduced by chaos. They move slowly, but with precision. They speak rarely, but with weight. Their actions are not reactions, they are revelations. Stillness is the womb of the soul's rebirth. It is the chamber where all noise is silenced, where clarity is conceived, and where the next version of you begins to form not from external validation, but from internal alignment. Those who seek depth must stop performing long enough to descend. And those who descend will not come back the same. To sit with stillness is to surrender to something greater than the ego, the quiet intelligence that lives beyond thought, beyond fear, beyond appearance. And in that surrender, insight flows. It comes like a whisper, a knowing, a flash of light in the dark. And when it comes, it changes everything, not because the world is different, but because you now see it differently. So remain still, not to escape life, but to enter it more fully. Insight does not chase you. It waits for you to be still enough to receive it. Every word you speak is not just heard by others, it is also heard by the deepest, most hidden parts of you. The shadow, that unacknowledged, unconscious dimension of your psyche, is always listening. It watches how you speak about yourself. It studies how you speak about others. It absorbs the tone, the repetition, the beliefs. And with every careless word, you either train it or you trigger it. When you speak from insecurity, from bitterness, from the need to be seen, your shadow takes note. It does not moralize, it does not judge. It simply records, it catalogs what you repeat and reflects it back in behavior, in impulses, in emotional patterns. You might believe you're just venting, just expressing, just being real, but your shadow sees it as instruction. You are teaching it what kind of world you believe in, what kind of self you identify with, what kind of pain you refuse to heal. Over time, these words become inner laws. You say, "I'm not good enough," and your shadow reshapes your choices to match. You say, "People always betray me," and your shadow guides you to scenarios that fulfill that prophecy. The language you use becomes the architecture of your unconscious life, and the shadow, obedient and loyal, follows the design you unconsciously created. But it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. Tone is a key. When your words drip with sarcasm, with resentment, with disdain, the shadow understands this as a signal. The wound is still open. The healing has not happened, and it begins to stir, not to comfort you, but to push you toward a confrontation with what you're avoiding, because the shadow doesn't want to be ignored. It wants to be integrated. And if your words suggest you're still at war with yourself, it will pull you deeper into that war until you wake up. There's a danger in speaking mindlessly. You believe you're being expressive, authentic, free. But in reality, you may be reinforcing a version of yourself that no longer serves your evolution. You may be keeping old identities alive through casual self-sabotage, calling yourself lazy, calling yourself broken, calling yourself cursed, not realizing that your shadow hears these labels as truth. And yet, there is another way. If your shadow listens, then it can also be re-educated. It can be spoken to with reverence, not fear. You can choose words that do not deny your darkness, but honor its power. You can speak from a place that acknowledges pain without being defined by it. You can say, I am healing, I am learning, I am growing into wholeness, not as performance, not as delusion, but as an invocation of something deeper within you that is ready to rise. Speak with intention. Speak as though your future self is listening. Speak as though your soul is learning from the vibration of your voice, because it is. Every time you choose presence over performance, clarity over noise, truth over ego, your shadow hears it. And slowly, it transforms from saboteur to ally, from chaos to clarity, from exile to guide. You cannot lie to your shadow. You cannot fool it with pretty words and clever mantras. But you can show it the way through the sincerity of your language, the honesty of your silence, and the depth of your awareness. And in doing so, you begin to speak not from fragmentation, but from integration. Because every word you say, especially when you think no one is listening, is a spell cast into your unconscious. And the shadow, it is always listening, always responding, always becoming what you repeatedly declare. Speak when it adds value. Speak when your silence has taught you what to say. But until then, shut up, win more. Your depth is not in what you express, but in what you contain. Your greatness is not in what you project, but in what you preserve. In a world that cannot stop talking, become the one who listens, observes, waits, and wins, because real power is quiet, and silence is the sound of someone becoming unstoppable.